Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm co-founder and CEO of Reason Automation. Thank you so much for joining us. With me today is Joe Shao and David Ingram. Uh, David, can you give a quick introduction, please?
Sure. I'm David. I lead the BI and analytics effort here at Reason Automation. Um, Prior to that, I had a number of roles, but the most relevant being spending 7 years at Amazon, during which time I was on the retail team as a senior vendor manager. I also spent 2 years with FBA doing analysis for FBA fees and that kind of thing, and then finally a turn on the devices team in a marketing role.
Awesome. And that's why I'm very glad to have David here building things for us. Prior to joining Reason, David was also at an agency leading analytics for them as a customer of Reason Automation. So he's bridging a couple of different experiences in order to bring you this AVN toolkit. Joe?
Hi, my name is Joe Shao. I am a co-founder here at Reason Automation. I spent 3 years at Amazon on the vendor management side, both in office products and then in tools. After I left Amazon, I started helping brands sell on Amazon, and it was during that time when I was working for a tools brand that I came across the need of like, why is it so hard to report on my business? And so Reason Automation was really born from that need of businesses needing their Amazon data in a way that was accessible to them.
Thanks, Joe. And that's when Joe called me. Joe and I met each other working at Amazon in the retail business on a vendor's account. What was it, Joe? I think it was I asked you for a lost buy box analysis on your second or third day, and you said, cool, I'm going to go do it. And you figured out how to get the data, put it together, performed that analysis down at the product level, aggregated it up to the right level of granularity for presentation to us. And both me and our boss were blown away. And it's that same DNA that I think Joe's brought to his work here at Reason, starting from the right inputs and helping ensure that those are extremely high quality and letting that drive the quality of your outputs as well. So I'm really excited to have him here and his experience in the tool that we've built. And last, but certainly not least, is I'm Andrew, co-founder and CEO, like I mentioned. I'm also ex-Amazon. I was there in 2 tours for about 7 years total. When I say 2 tours, I mean that, like many folks, I went, left, and then went back because it wasn't quite enough the first time. And between those trips, I was in office products, consumer electronics, and books on the retail side, and then on devices and Alexa on the other side. And I started off in the retail business working with folks like Joe, solving problems for brands like you, but then eventually got really passionate about data and bridging customer experience with that data. And that's why I ended up in Alexa working on data projects, and why now I'm really happy to be helping brands like you get more out of their data and not just helping them pipe it from one place to the other. So it's AVN season. We're very, very excited to show you what we've built. Before I dive in, and I know I've just talked a whole bunch, but really quickly here, Reason Automation is an Amazon financial data and analytics company, and we pride ourselves on being the highest accuracy, most usable, most granular data source available on the market for this data. And that's why our AVN tool felt like a natural extension of the things that we've been working on. In Q4, we unlocked the ability to create a product level profit model, combining both your sell-in and your sell-in and sell-out co-op and other expenses to be able to actually show you unit economics. But we realized a lot of brands have a lot of SKUs. And so how do we make that easier to manage at scale? And what is the reason that you need to manage those things? It's for things like AVN. And so here we are. Having built a tool that we hope helps set you up for negotiation with Amazon, reflecting our experience as vendor managers, but also our time serving brands like you at Reason and our other capacities. Joe or David, anything to add on there before I dive into this tool?
No, I think that was a really appropriate intro. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, go figure. If you do this a few times, that it gets better every time, at least a little bit. All right, everybody should be able to see a scary looking table on my screen. And I apologize for starting with something with so much data in it, but I think it's important for you to see how much data goes into the reports that we've built here, and how all of it starts from the lowest granularity for maximum accuracy and then rolls up so that you can start to find trends. So as former VMs, we know that Amazon cares about a whole lot of different negotiation KPIs, and the specific ones they care about change by account, by team, by season, etc. But overall, they always care about the big three, which is your shipped COGS growth. How is that changing year over year? Your in-stock rates, and how is that changing year over year? And your actual PPM, or Amazon's margin, of course, and how is that evolving over time? So what we've done is help you get ready for those conversations with Amazon by showing you those your performance on those three KPIs at the product level, and then helping you roll that up as needed to categories and subcategories. Basically, we allow you to tag your products to friendly titles, SKUs, categories, etc., so that you can roll this up instantly. And instead of looking at individual line items, I can now see performance at the category level. You can tell that David here helped us build this, and that David is English because this is the most English list of category names I've ever seen. As an American, I don't find myself often using the words trundles, fairlings, or blodgets, but I've said them at least 100 times since this tool has come out. So I appreciate that, David. And here, what you can see is that we've not only calculated things like year-over-year growth for you, we've also calculated contribution to change, or CTC. And for those who need a refresher, what contribution to change is it's showing how each of these line items contributed to a total growth here. The total business growth looks like they did 3.9 million in shipped COGS, up 53.9% year over year, or 5,300 basis points, where a basis point is 1/100th of a percent. And by looking at this contribution to change metric, we can now see exactly how much each category or line item contributed to that 53.9% growth. In this case, I've sorted by the CTC column, and we can see that the trundles category has drove the largest growth impact, with almost 14% of that 53.9% year-over-year growth being driven by this category, even though it was one of the smaller ones. This is essentially helping you normalize which are the biggest impact drivers for a change across both the size of the prize and the actual growth rate. We call this mixed rate analysis. If you've ever heard that from somebody at Amazon, or if you have some ex-Amazon folks in your universe who talk about that a lot, that's where that term comes from. We've calculated that here for you, not only for shipped COGS, but also for profitability and for net receipts, because this isn't just about Amazon, it's also about you, and making sure that those things are moving in lockstep is important. Because we let you define these categories and subcategories however you want, we want it to be really easy for you to switch granularities and investigate different aspects of your business. So these aren't Amazon's categories, they're whatever you define. So this could be your own internal categorization from your ERP that you use across all channels, but it could also be something specific for Amazon, where you seeing brands use this for, if they have multiple brands in their account, then using this to separate by brand. But even using these category and subcategory to do things like separate by product line or life cycle, color, size, any other variation where they want to be able to get at this level of insight and break down the business in this way. We also let you map your products to friendly titles and manufacturer part numbers or SKUs, so that if your team doesn't speak ASIN, it becomes a little bit easier to present this data to your other stakeholders. So here you can see we've inserted a product title. You can control exactly what that is, so you don't have to use Amazon's customer optimized ones. It can be product X, color Y for really easy scanning. We also, again, let you switch that to SKU, so that if your team is very, very used to interpreting part numbers, then you can make sure to speak their language. But always, always, always helping you roll this up and down. The last thing I'll cover on this page is that, especially for this audience of EU vendors, you are used to seeing your customers pay in multiple different currencies. In the US, this is less of a problem, but in the EU, I've seen how many different currencies your customers can shop in, and it is kind of overwhelming. And that means that a lot of your co-op transactions and other financial details are actually originally billed in other currencies, even if Amazon ultimately needs to convert them in order to deduct them from your payments. So what does that mean for you? That means that if you don't convert the data yourself, that you're actually performing an analysis on data that has mixed currencies in it. So what did our wonderful BI leader, David, do? He figured out how to pull a historical daily customer currency conversion rates for every single currency pair, built that into this tool, and we now convert every single line item transaction for you into the correct currency using the correct daily historical exchange rate, not a current peg rate, not a single rate. So it's as close to accounting accurate as we can get without knowing Amazon's actual exchange rates. So you can very quickly convert here between USD or to Euro or to pound sterling. And so even if your data already is in euro, we recommend using this currency converter, because that way it converts any of those outlier transactions that somebody may have made on your site in a different currency, like pound sterling or any other European currency. David, anything to add there?
I just would take that a step further, which is, I think if you're in the EU, it's actually very likely that you'll have things that will have shipped to the UK, and you'll have British pounds within your data. So we recommend that you actually use one of the currency conversions. You can use the unconverted data to check this dashboard against your source data, but most of the time, safest mode will be into using one of the currency conversions.
Great point, David. And I don't normally show this as we present this demo, but we actually have a page in this dashboard that walks you through exactly how that works, what we've done, how to use this conversion tool. And then to David's point, if you have multiple currencies in your data, it'll show up here, showing you the magnitude of those different currencies and their impact. And then as you use this conversion tool, they will convert here as well. So you can see dynamically how that's impacting the data quality. Great point, David. All right. So starting with that, again, the total business view and looking at the KPIs that Amazon cares about from your sell-in performance. But we want to very quickly move on to the other elements of the negotiation. So now we look at your total investment program. We've separated this by sell-in versus sell-out. On the sell-in side, this is the terms that you are typically used to negotiating with Amazon every AVN, whether that's your accrual, standard-based terms plus marketing accruals and merchandising accruals, damage allowance, freight allowance, if you happen to be in that relationship with Amazon. And what we've done here is add up from your actual deductions from payment the amount that you paid for each of these, and then calculated what the actual percentage of net receipts that you were billed was. This isn't just the negotiated percentage. This is the actual calculated percentage, so that you can validate whether or not that's happening correctly. Sometimes Amazon's billed accurately. Sometimes they've overbilled you. And sometimes in rare cases, they've underbilled you. But either way, you can know that in advance so that you can go into this conversation being fully equipped with the right information. And then we've also shown you how those things evolve year over year. So both the absolute value of your rebates, and then how did your percentage of net receipts change? So it looks like this brand last year had a 15.5% program, and that increased to 17.2% this year. Increase of 10% or 1.5 points in absolute value, but it wasn't driven equally. In this case, we can see that was almost all freight allowance, a big 33% increase year over year. Since this is negotiated, I imagine that they understood that this was coming, the brand. But the first thing I would do if I'm this brand is check, did freight costs actually increase for my region 33% last year? And if not, then maybe it's a good time to have a conversation with Amazon about whether that was tuned correctly. Or certainly if they come back asking for more money, be able to push back on that. And then in this bottom half, we've done a similar analysis with your sellout co-op agreements. So these are everything that's billed on shipped COGS. And that typically means things like price discounts and anything else that you do to lower prices or control prices for customers. And so here you can see we've broken that out by agreement type, whether that's something like a VIR that's getting dinged on a per unit basis for shipped units, straight payments, or even things like VPCs. And anything that we don't recognize gets put into this other bucket. Here we can see that there's some growth here as well, but that as a percentage of shipped COGS, this brand actually invested less as a percentage of shipped COGS in outbound co-op than they did the previous year, a decrease of 14.3%, which is a great story. But it also means that I might expect Amazon to come knocking at this brand's door, looking for more guaranteed commitments around funding, price promotions, et cetera, through marquee events, et cetera. Joe or David, anything to add here?
I think one of the things that's really cool about this page is that it's actually calculating your actual deductions that is occurring on the Amazon side. One of the brands that we looked at had like a really weird outlier where like July went to like 0 deductions. And that's important for any brand to know as they're going into a negotiation, because that's definitely something that Amazon could come back for on a post audit and whatnot. And so kind of knowing what's there and what's not there is always really important. Conversely, I've spoken with other brands who've seen where after a negotiation, the old agreement didn't get sunsetted, and then they actually got billed twice. And so that would also be something that would be viewable here as well.
Exactly. Looking at this graph on the right here, you can get a sense of what Joe is talking about, where you can see that if we look back to January 2023, this brand had basically no investments or no spend in sell-in co-op agreements. And so if in this case, it looks like they just weren't under contract or under terms for those agreements until April, and then the billing started to ramp up. But it could be that Amazon simply forgot to bill for them. And in this case, you can see that's probably what happened. There was no co-op accrual billing here in these first few months, and then there's this giant spike in July. If I'm this brand and this isn't familiar to me, then I'd make sure that those numbers add up. And if not, to then have a conversation with Amazon about making sure that you're whole and that they didn't take too much. Awesome. So from there, we help you investigate both sides of co-op, starting with the sell-in side. First, we show you that performance again over time at the top here by agreement type. But then we quickly drill you down to your damage allowance and helping you validate whether or not this agreement is tuned correctly by comparing it to your actual customer return rate from Retail Analytics. Now, of course, your damage allowance covers more than just customer returns, but in theory, these things should move together. And if they're not, that can be an indication that either Amazon is going to ask for more or that you might be able to have a conversation about lowering the rate. And so in this case, what we can see is that this brand over time, their return rate is actually increasing. And you can see that here in the graph as this teal line, their return rate is moving up and to the right until their return rate for customers is almost the same as their actual rate. It's more of a get ahead of Amazon's ask moment for this brand, where I would expect Amazon to come knocking for point increases here on that damage allowance to cover the shrinking gap here. But we also help you drill this down to the product level and then again to the category, subcategory level as well, so that you can see if there are pockets of products that are better or worse performing. So here I'm going to sort this by shipped units so that we get a sense of magnitude and look at that return rate versus the damage allowance rate. And sure enough, here's right away a line item of 16,000 units that we're shipping with only a 0.2% return rate versus that 2% damage allowance. And that tells me that there might be pockets of products here that are not problematic and that it's just the blended average that's getting us closer and closer. So if I switch to category view, I can again see outliers. And here, yes, it looks like some categories like widgets have a relatively low return rate. Others like wingdings have a much higher return rate. And so I would get ready to have a conversation about Amazon about treating these differently. Can we set up a different damage allowance for these different product sets that properly reflects their different needs? And then diving in on the sellout side as well. Similar validation tools, but in this case, we're helping you understand whether your total investment in sellout co-op and lowering prices for customers is actually commensurate with your growth in customer sales. So we show that to you here mathematically and then graphed. And when we look at this table, we can see that the investment in outbound co-op, the growth rate, wow, that's a huge number. But if I look at the absolute values, they're pretty consistent. And so what this tells me is that this brand probably just started advertising, or I'm sorry, not advertising, doing price promotions in January 2023 and ramped up and now is comping that small start. But we can see here they've settled into a more or less consistent pattern of spend. And so their spend is not actually increasing year over year. I would normally expect that to mean that their growth rate is stalling out, but instead their growth rate is actually continuing to go up and to the right. So this is a very positive story for this brand. To me, this suggests that they've figured out the right kinds of promotions and the right level of investment to drive their business. Basically, I would guess that this is a really well-tuned subscribe and save promotion because they're spending a very similar amount to, for example, acquire new customers every month while still seeing total revenue go up and to the right. So promos tuned right. They've got people retaining in the sub, and this is the kind of data I would expect to see. However, I would also expect this brand to have this be a pain point when talking to Amazon. It looks like their overall spend in customer co-op as a percentage of ship COGS is going down, which we saw on that earlier screen. So that could be something that Amazon says, hey, it looks like you're spending less on the platform. It looks like you're investing less on the platform on driving customer demand. Tell us how that's going to change in 2025 and 2026. And then again, as always, drilling you down to the product level or the category level so that you can look for trends at a more granular level. In this case, we can see that, again, that co-op percentage of COGS is very variable depending on which category we're looking at. This also calls out that there will always be some straight payment agreements that can't be attributed at the item level. When that occurs, we don't guess. We just break those out separately for you so that you can see that that's occurred and you can decide how to do that attribution yourself. Joe and David, anything to add here?
Not at this moment. I think that was a good summary. Thank you.
Yeah, good summary.
Awesome. One of these days we'll rehearse this in advance and I won't uselessly ask if you guys have questions or anything to add, but that day is not today. All right. We focused a lot on the Amazon standard negotiation inputs, but what we found is that a lot of brands have been trained to focus on those exclusively and not pay as much attention to anything that Amazon doesn't bring up. The two most common P&L leaks that we see that Amazon doesn't bring up unless they're also impacting them are chargebacks and claim deductions. And so we've helped you remember that those are an input to your own profitability and track those over time. And so here we can see that this brand has about 0.65% of net receipts that they get charged in chargebacks. It's not a huge number, but it's not an insignificant one either. It's ticking up very slowly year over year. So this isn't something that I would spend a lot of effort on, but certainly something to keep an eye on. And so very quickly, you can do that here by looking at what were the types of reason codes and how is that springing up over time. In this case, it looks like almost all of the chargebacks here are SIOC related or ships in on container, but that there are periodically some prep cap seal issues here. So this is likely a product that has liquids in it. And so here I would immediately notice that, wow, we have a very consistent SIOC issue. It might not be a big dollar amount or euro amount, but if it's consistently happening, this might be something worth investigating upstream and having a good answer for Amazon before we ever talk to them in the negotiation. I might also go talk to my outbound team and say, why are we suddenly seeing spikes in that prep cap seal chargeback? What are we doing about that? And then we've also shown that to you here aggregated by product, so that if, for example, you are trying to find trends, you can now, for example, choose that SIOC data and then be able to understand just the performance for that one data piece. But we also are giving you the list of items here in this table so that you can see which items had the most chargebacks in absolute value, and then also by category and subcategory as always. And you can actually pop these open and see what were the top reason codes there and how that's all evolved over time. So really trying to give you detailed information on actionable chargeback trends here. Pulling all of this together, David's favorite slide in this tool is this cost of business, or I think of it as your fully loaded costs of your Amazon channel or your Amazon EBITDA. Basically, what we've done here is taken a cash accounting view of your Amazon business, the payments that Amazon makes to you, starting with your payments last year, comparing it to this year with all the deductions and showing you how those have evolved, and then actually calculating that as a margin. So what were your expenses as a percentage of your income for each category, and how has that changed over year? So what we see here is that this business last year had a 63.7% margin, and that actually declined 516 basis points year over year to 58.5%. That is a pretty significant contraction in the Amazon channel for just 1 year. Certainly enough that if I was this brand, that would be raising big alarm bells for me. And normally, I think brands would spend a lot of time looking at things like co-op and trying to understand where were the changes year over year that drove this in our agreements, in our promotions, etc. We've pre-calculated this point change year over year. What were the driving factors? And we can see that it wasn't co-op, it wasn't returns, it wasn't chargebacks, it wasn't any of these things. Almost the entire value is driven by claim deductions or shortage claims and price claims. In other words, this business made 5% less on their Amazon channel just because of an increase in shortage and price claims. So what does that mean for this brand? It means that they either have a very major shortage claim dispute opportunity and they need to start doing that and investing time there. Or it means that those shortage and price claims are legitimate and they have a very serious PO transmission problem and confirmation problem where Amazon believes that they're receiving items that the brand never ships, and they're doing that so consistently that it's messing with their accounting. Anything to add here, gentlemen?
I would just say of this slide, as Andrew said, this is a P&L built from your payments data. And I'm looking more into this subject, so I find this super fascinating. But there's often disagreement between what Amazon seems to be saying to vendors about shortages, for instance, in invoice data versus payments data. And ultimately, I feel like the payments table, the money that they send, is probably the truest and clearest picture of what the actual accuracy of your relationship with Amazon is. So that's why I think this slide is so very important.
It's a great point about source of truth, and that using Amazon's payments is a great way to start the conversation rather than to start it from any other point. Because at the end of the day, the payments reflect what actual money changed hands and why. And anything moving backwards from that, whether the agreement says that's the correct money amount of money or not, means that ultimately, so this tends to be the highest fidelity view a lot of brands have ever seen of what it means to sell on Amazon and how profitable they were in that year and what the drivers were. And then last, but certainly not least, we then show you this same information broken out over time. That last slide showed it to you aggregated for a year. This slide is showing you the same information over trailing 12 months so that you can start to see trends. Now, because this is a cash view, you'll notice that the total profit for the most recent months here looks negative because Amazon always likes to pay after 30, 60, 90, whatever, however many days that they've extracted from you. But they deduct things sooner than that. So, of course, your P&L is always going to look negative for the first couple of months. But over time, it normalizes and you start to get a truer sense of how things like your co-op, claim deductions, et cetera, are trending over time. Right now, we're looking at this at a summary green, but you also have the ability to flip this to the detail view, which breaks out each of those line items in quite a bit more granularity. And then you can even expand a lot of these to see even more detail if there is some available. And these last financial pages, I think, are one of the most important use cases for things related to this currency conversion tool. This is where you see the impact the most. As you use things like the cost of business tab, if you move from the unconverted to euros, for example, you'll very often see these values shift because the actual currency conversion is helping increase the accuracy. But this is also a really powerful tool for helping you present to stakeholders in other regions. So, for example, if you are a European company with a US subsidiary, you can give this tool to your US team and have them report back to you in euros, or vice versa. If you are the European subsidiary of a US company or a UK-based company, that you can then perform your local analysis in euros and then pass this back to your leadership in whatever currency that they need. That's really it. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. If you haven't yet submitted questions, please feel free to do so, but we are quite a few coming in and getting answered dynamically. But Joe is going to take over and drive us through some live Q&A.
Cool. All right. We'll start with some of the unanswered questions first, and then I'll circle back with some of the ones that got answered live in case anyone missed them. Can you load ad spend into this just at an aggregate level was the question.
Good question. So we can, but we are limited by the amount of data that Amazon allows us to pull. You're probably familiar with the fact that Amazon's APIs, Amazon's ad APIs only allow you to pull 60 to 90 days worth of historical data. For that reason, we find it hard to include in this view because if you were to sign up with us today, for example, and we can only pull 60 to 90 days of history, then we're only getting your advertising spend for a tiny portion of 2024. So instead, what we've decided to do is mask that for new customers. And since you already have a sense of what you spent in 2024, to give you the opportunity to add that in if you need to. Basically, what this tool has is it has a manual upload tool that allows you to add in other costs. It only has one field for it. So you can product cost. That was what it was originally built for. We thought maybe brands would want to upload their landed COGS in order to get a full P&L picture. Instead, we found that every brand we've talked to said that's really thoughtful of you, and we will absolutely never, ever share our COGS data with you, you crazy person. So instead of uploading COGS, you can definitely load ad spend there.
Cool. Yeah, and that was their next question, which was, is there manual loading of COGS and of ad spend? And yeah, so that's an area that you can potentially use to load your historical ad spend. Next question: does this update once deductions have been challenged and Amazon refunds? Answer here is yes. AVN updates regularly with the latest information coming from Amazon. This comes from invoicing, PO data, chargebacks, co-op, inventory, and sellout data.
Yep. And sorry, let me pull up that cost of business slide again. So in this case, this demo data doesn't have any actual claim reversals or refunds or anything like this. But if it did, then normally those would show up as line items under the income section. Right now, it's just payments, so PCOGS values. But if there were things like co-op refunds, claim deductions, et cetera, then those would all show up as a separate line item here, accounting style.
Cool. What countries do we cover? So Vendor Central and Seller Central marketplaces, we cover them all. On the analytics side, there is some language dependencies, and it does vary a little bit by region. AVN specifically, North America, EU, those are definitely covered. And then we can definitely create support also for places like the Middle East. Next question, does it pull titles in addition to ASINs? So from, I think this goes back to the first page you were showing, the funnel, Andrew. So yes, ASIN titles come in dynamically. These are joined for you from Amazon's data. The SKU info is something that you load from a catalog perspective. And then category and subcategory are also things that are customizable by you in terms of how you want to see the business. Some businesses might want to see it based off of their own categories. Some businesses might want to see it based off of the way that Amazon's categorizing your items, since especially with large conglomerate type of brands, where you might have multiple vendor managers and multiple categories. That would definitely be a useful tool for you as well. So then you can have curated conversations based off of which vendor manager and what category you're speaking with.
Just a clarification, if you haven't uploaded custom titles, it'll pull from Amazon's product catalog, but you do have the ability to replace that with whatever titles that you want.
Correct. And that title, the custom titles would be uploaded in that same sheet that you would use for SKU customization and for category and subcategory. There's also a bunch of other filter tags in here that are not shown here, but you can apply to any report too. So if you have other things like you might want to filter on seasonality or any other attribute that you might want to apply on a custom basis, you can do that too.
Yep. Next question was, what is the look back window you're able to provide? David answered this. It includes data beginning from 2023. So it's basically a two-year look back at this point. As Andrew mentioned earlier, there are some limitations in terms of what Amazon is able to provide, which is why we've chosen the 2-year window for this specific product. One new question. Oh, what is the cost?
Great question. So we have special pricing for the AVN season. If you are a single country, and you only need it for one country. It's a US $9.99 per month for access to this and all of our other analytics tools, which includes our weekly business review tools, product research tools, profit research tools, etc. And if you have multiple countries, multiple account, all of your countries and data, that will allow all the data to flow into a single dashboard so that you can switch between regions quickly in this tool.
I think you broke up a little bit there, Andrew. The multi-marketplace, just to repeat for folks, 1,500 for the 3 months. So.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? Oh, looks like we got another one.
Oh, that's the off-the shelf cost one.
Oh, got it. Great. Are there any other questions from anyone that we can help with today? All right, if there's nothing else, thank you so much, everyone. If you are interested in talking with us more about this tool, you have more questions, or you want to move forward, you can go to our website at reasonautomation.com. In our navigation, there is that AVN Toolkit link right there for more information. It'll take you to this page. And from this page, you can schedule a demo with us if you want to speak more, or feel free to email me directly, andrew@reasonautomation.com, and I'm happy to speak with you further. Thanks very much for your time today, everyone. We will be sharing a recording of this webinar once it's done, so look for that email from us if you want to share it with your stakeholders. But also, if you want to schedule a follow-up meeting with other folks on your team or ask us questions privately, please feel free to do that as well. Thank you so much for joining us at the end of your day. It's bright and early here on the West Coast, but it was wonderful to see you all. Thank you very much.